on Sukkos. Sukkos. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev on the holiday of Sukkot. No, you know what? I'll tell you another story. The mashal of the Baal Shem Tov's shofar. What's the mashal of the Baal Shem Tov's shofar? That the king had a son, and the son leaves the palace, and he wanders around, and finally he comes back, and it becomes very emotional, and that's going to be like the shofar. So let me tell you the story. This is a story within a story. Very beautiful story of the Baal Shem Tov shofar. I used to have a Chabad house in a city called Or Yehuda. I started the Chabad house there. In like 1987, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that the way to get all the Jews out of Russia is to make Chabad houses all over the world. And in America, there were organizations that made big riots and big protests. And the Rebbe said that that's not the way to do it. And he begged them to stop doing it. In any case, the Rebbe said the way to get the Jews out of Egypt, out of Russia, is to make Chabad houses all over the world. Of course, nobody understood what connection is this to this. But nevertheless, they did. Chabad made in Israel, I think that year, that year they made 250 new Chabad houses were made in Israel. I think also elsewhere in the world. And sure enough, in like Tufshin Nun, when was it, 1990, all of a sudden Gorbachev got in and he said, okay, no more communism. Everybody can get out. Doors just opened up. Everybody left. So it was one of those people who made a Chabad house was me. And I made a Chabad house in a nearby city called Or Yehuda. And it was very successful, especially with children. It was very successful. And I used to go around to the schools. I play guitar also. They used to go around to the schools, and I would tell the children about the holiday, and I would sing a couple of songs, and then we would scream out a few of the Pesukim, Shema Yisrael. And a lot of these children were not religious. These schools were not religious. Now it's different in Or Yehuda. It's changed tremendously. But these schools, Pirkov and Malay Aleph, Malay Beit, all these schools, they were not religious schools. And so I got to be pretty popular over there. I did it without money. I didn't get paid. And it was the Chabad house, and I enjoyed it tremendously. And there were some schools that they would there was one school where I have pictures. They would bring out like 600 children. They would sit them all outside. And I had this little sort of speaker with a guitar, and I would sing. And the kids, non-religious kids, they would scream Shema Yisrael. It was amazing. Tears would come running down my eyes. Anyway, once I got an invitation to a school which was called Kidum Hayeled. Kidum Hayeled. Another name I didn't know. Kidum Hayeled. Kidum Hayeled means progressing the child. So I went there. Now, every school I went to, I did exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. I would sing a couple songs, play. The kids would sing along with me, sing songs that these kids know. And then I would tell them a story. And then the story of the Baal Shem Tov. I would tell them a little bit about the holiday, a little bit. These kids, it was kids, I had to make the whole thing like 10 minutes at the most. So I would play a few songs, and then I would tell them a little bit about the holiday. And then I would tell them the story. And the end of the story is sounding the shofar. So I went to this place called Kidum Hayeled, and I as soon as I got there, I thought there was a lot of parents there, a lot of teachers. It was for special education children, but like really special education children, children that just were like on the border of being institutionalized. So I guess they could learn something. But they were all like, super hyperactive, or some of them were just sitting there and wagging their heads. And they had attention span of, few seconds. So I got in there. I didn't really realize this, and I played the music. The music was okay. And when I played the music, they were all, everyone's okay. And then I started explaining a little bit about the holiday, and I saw that everybody was sort of, squirming and squiggling, and this. And of course, the parents, each parent was watching his own children to see that everything, and the teachers, they had to sort of control these people. So nobody really had, I didn't really have anybody's real attention. But I still didn't exactly catch what was going on over there. And then I started telling the story of the Baal Shem Tov. And when I started telling the story of the Baal Shem Tov, then they were starting to, after the story itself is like 3 minutes long, something like that. And I realized that, I was really lost. So I figured, okay, maybe there's a couple of the teachers that are this. In any case, that's all I've got, So I figured I'll tell the story, and I'll try to get through this, and I'll sound the shofar. So I told the story, and the kids are all squiggling around. What's the story? And I sort of embellished the story, but I'll tell you. Once upon a time, there was a king. A king lived in a great, beautiful castle. And he was powerful, mighty, wise. And he had a son that was very wild son. In English, in Hebrew, they call it a shovav. And his son was wanted very much to go outside of the castle grounds and play with the kids over there. There was this high turret it was like a lookout place, and the son would go up there and he would look out and see these kids playing. He wanted to play. And he asked his father said no. So one night he snuck out of the palace and he changed his clothes, had to change the clothes. And he started playing with the kids, and he really liked it, really enjoyed it. And then after a while, he figured he should move a little bit away from the palace so that nobody would see him. So he moved from the palace. And then he saw signs, has anyone seen this boy? Right? It was a picture of him. So he figured he should get out of he ran away to a different city. And now he has these regular clothes, and he's already a little dirty or something. So it doesn't really look like a royal son. But he's getting hungry. He's hungry, At first he took a little bit of money and maybe sold his clothes or something. So he's looking around. So he sees there's these people begging. So he starts begging. Everybody sees a young boy. They give him money. So he's set. He's got money. His problem is sleeping, but he learns to sleep outside. And so it is. He wanders around from place to place. and when he left, he was 10 years old. As he wanders around from place to place and he's sleeping outside, and meanwhile, in the meantime, he really has to sort of, fend for himself, and he learns how to protect himself, and he's sleeps in like sometimes in the forest, and he has to fight against bears and lions, and he's tremendously strong and brave. But this whole time, he's like a wild man, and he has long hair, and he's all dirty, and he's wandering around from place to place, collecting money. He's not with the children anymore, playing games. And one day, from all the wandering around, he comes back to his original town. And he sees the palace in the distance. He thinks, wow, over there I can for sure get a nice donation. So he goes to the palace big gates, and he knocks on the gate. And the guards come, they tell him to leave, but he doesn't understand them, and they don't understand him. So they try forcibly to remove him, and they underestimate him. He's tremendously strong, and he's knocking them out, fighting with them, and they're trying to fight with him. They're bringing reinforcements, and he's just stronger than all of them. Meanwhile, his father, the last 10 years, every day goes up on this turret, and he's looking for his son. He hasn't forgotten it. He still feels that his son is alive. So he's looking. He happens to notice that there's sort of a little scuffle going on over there, but that's, the guards will take care of that. And he looks down, and he turns to go. A little tear comes from his eye, and he turns to go. Meanwhile, his son down there is fighting with all these guards, and he gives them like one big knock. He knocks all of them down, and he lifts his head up like in victory, and suddenly his eye catches the side of his father's face in the turret. And he thinks to himself, wow, that man is familiar. Really, what's going on? Who is that man? And what is this place? Where am I? And suddenly it all comes back to him. Wow, that man, this place, I grew up in this place. That man is my father. I'm the priest. But in those few seconds, that he started coming to his memory as the guards got up and they started hitting him, beating him. And he realized that that's it. He's already knocked back and he's about to lose his consciousness, and he realizes that he's bleeding and that he's this. And so he looks up at his father and he yells, "Father, Father, help me." But he forgot the language. He doesn't remember the language. So what he's yelling out, his father doesn't understand. So he has no choice. And he looks up at his father and he screams from the essence of his soul. And his father hears this voice. He turns around and he looks, and his eyes meet his son's eyes. And he says, "Whoa, those are eyes of royalty. That's my son that I've been waiting for, looking for 10 years. His father runs down the steps of this big tower, and he opens up the gates, and he pushes all of the guards away, and he hugs his son. He's all dirty and bleeding and smelly. And he hugs him. He says, my son, I've been waiting for you. I haven't forgotten you for 10 years. And the son says to his father in the language that he understands, "Father, Father, I'm finally back home." So I tell the kids, what is the father? The kids say, this is God. And who is the son? The son is the Jewish people. I say, yes, and the palace is the shul, synagogue. And the sound of the shofar is the Jews screaming out to God, "Father, King, Avinu Malkeinu, I love you, save me." That's the story. Okay, now, after I got into the story took how long? 5 minutes, 3 minutes. After about half a minute into the story, I realized full force what my crowd is, who these kids are. But I figured, okay, I'm already into the story, so I just finished the story, that's it. And I heard this. And there were a couple teachers that really liked it, and they sort of controlled the kids. The kids were sort of rolling around and hitting each other and doing all sorts of stuff. And that's it, and then I sounded the shofar. The shofar everybody listened to, I sounded the shofar, and everybody clapped, the kids love the shofar. And I left. That's it. And then I also learned to be a shochet, to a ritual slaughterer. So I used to do kaparot. Kaparot is this Jewish ritual that they do before Yom Kippur. You take a chicken, you swing it around your head, and then you slaughter the chicken. And then that's the whole thing. The person's supposed to watch the chicken being slaughtered. And that's my thing. I slaughtered the chickens. There's a big long line in Ohr Yehuda. This is all in Ohr Yehuda. Big long line of people, and I'm slaughtering the chickens and everything. They make a little money. Also, people pay for you and people donate sometimes to the Chabad house. There's a thing over there. But there was this little kid that was running around, and he was like knocking over things. A wild kid, just running around, knocking. Everybody's telling him, "Hey, love it." They were yelling at him, and he was just running around, not listening to everybody and laughing at everybody. And he was also running around me, which is, if I'm like killing a chicken and he knocks me or something like that, that I could cut myself, I could cut the knife could fall, who knows what could happen. So I said to this kid, I said to this boy, stop it, nothing happened. So he was running around, I put the knife down on the side, and I waited for the kid to run around by me. And I saw his parents had no control over him. So he came, and I grabbed a hold of him. I grabbed a hold of his shoulders, and I said, "Stop it, you have to stop. You're running around, this is dangerous, you have to stop." He looks at me, and he said, "Oh." "You're Rabbi Tuvia. You came to our school, Kiddush Mayeled. You told the story about the king and the son." He told me the whole story, from the beginning to the end. I even think about it now. I went to the corner and I cried. And people were really angry at me because they couldn't figure out what was going on, and they wanted to kill the chickens. What does it show? It shows that the Jewish people are listening. And we can't judge a person by what we see. Kid knew the whole entire story. But it just has to be a meaningful thing. And eventually every Jew will remember who they really are and wake up and feel that the king is in the field. Have good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Good story.